The text message came through at 11:30 on a Thursday night, just as I was settling into bed with my library book. Mom, huge favor. Can you watch the kids this weekend? Work emergency. We'll drop them off Friday after school. No question mark. No, if you're available. Just the assumption that I would, as always, rearrange my life to accommodate his. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I stared at the glowing screen in the darkness of my bedroom, my reading glasses slipping down my nose. This would be the 4th weekend in 2 months. Not that I didn't love my grandchildren. 7-year-old Emma and 5-year-old Lucas were the lights of my life. But something about the casual expectation in those words made my chest tighten with an emotion I couldn't quite name. Of course, I typed back, because what else could a grandmother say? See you Friday. I set the phone on my nightstand and tried to return to my book, but the words blurred together. At 62, I thought this stage of life would be about freedom, about finally pursuing the things I'd set aside during 35 years of marriage to Richard, who'd passed 3 years ago from a sudden heart attack that left me widowed and adrift, about discovering who Margaret Chun was when she wasn't someone's wife or mother. Instead, I'd become the family's default solution to every scheduling conflict, every work demand, every inconvenience. My son Daniel had always been ambitious. Even as a child, he'd organized his toys with corporate efficiency, created elaborate business plans for his lemonade stand, and announced at age 10 that he would be a CEO before 40. He'd achieved that goal at 38, running a mid-sized tech consulting firm with the same single-minded determination he'd applied to everything in his life. His wife Jennifer was equally driven, a corporate attorney who billed hours like they were going out of style. Together, they created a life of impressive achievement and exhausting momentum, and somewhere in the middle of it all were Emma and Lucas, 2 beautiful children who seemed to spend more time with me than with their own parents. I didn't complain. Not out loud, anyway. Richard had taught me that family meant showing up, being dependable, putting others first. Those lessons had been drilled into me through decades of supporting his career moves, hosting his work dinners, and raising Daniel largely on my own while Richard traveled for business. When Richard died, I'd expected my life to open up. We'd made plans, he and I. We were going to travel to China, where my parents had emigrated from before I was born. We were going to take that cooking class in Tuscany. We were going to finally read all those books stacked on our nightstands and sleep in on Sundays, and be gloriously selfishly unscheduled. Instead, Richard's heart failed him at 64, and I found myself alone in a too-quiet house, wondering what I was supposed to do with all the years I apparently had left. Daniel had stepped in immediately after the funeral, full of plans and solutions. You shouldn't be alone so much, Mom. Why don't you watch Emma and Lucas a couple afternoons a week? It would be good for you to have purpose, and frankly, our nanny situation is a nightmare. Purpose. As if 60 years of living hadn't already given me plenty of that. But I'd agreed because what else was there? My part-time work at the community center's adult literacy program was fulfilling but only took up 2 mornings a week. My friends were busy with their own lives, their own grandchildren, their own late-life adventures that they'd somehow managed to claim for themselves. So I became Grandma Margaret, always available, always reliable, always there. Friday afternoon arrived with the kind of gray drizzle that matched my mood. I'd spent the morning preparing the guest room where the kids would sleep, washing sheets that were already clean, fluffing pillows that didn't need fluffing. Busy work to fill the hours before Daniel's SUV pulled into my driveway at 4:15. Emma burst through my front door first, her backpack nearly as big as she was, her dark hair escaping from 2 lopsided pigtails. Grandma, Daddy says we get to stay the whole weekend. Can we make those dumplings again? The ones with the twisty tops. Lucas followed more slowly, dragging a small suitcase and his stuffed elephant. At 5, he was quieter than his sister, more observant, with eyes that seemed to take in everything and reveal nothing. Hi, sweetie, I said, kneeling to hug them both. Emma squeezed tight. Lucas allowed the embrace with patient tolerance. Daniel appeared in the doorway, phone already pressed to his ear, his other hand making apologetic gestures. He was talking to someone about deliverables and timelines, his face creased with the constant low-level stress that seemed to be his permanent expression these days. Mom, you're a lifesaver. he said during a brief pause in his conversation, not quite making eye contact. Emergency client meeting in Boston. Flying out tonight, back Sunday evening. Kid's schedule is in Emma's backpack. Lucas has a soccer game tomorrow at 9, but if that's too early, Jennifer's mom might be able to. I'll take him, I said, cutting off the excuse I'd heard too many times. Jennifer's mother lived 40 minutes away and had her own health issues. The soccer game was never really negotiable. You're the best. He was already backing toward his car, phone still attached to his ear. Love you, gotta run. And just like that he was gone. Emma was already raiding my refrigerator, Lucas had settled on the couch with his elephant, and I stood in my entryway holding a crumpled piece of paper that listed a soccer game, a birthday party for someone named Aiden on Saturday afternoon, and a note that Emma needed her science project completed by Monday. Science project. That was new. Emma, I called toward the kitchen, where I could hear her rummaging through my snack drawer. What's this about a science project? She emerged with a string cheese and an apple, taking a bite of the latter with admirable efficiency. Oh yeah, we have to make a model of the solar system. It's due Monday. Daddy said you'd help me. Of course he did. That evening, after a dinner of the dumplings Emma had requested, which took me 2 hours to prepare from scratch because I'd never learned to take shortcuts in the kitchen, we spread out supplies on my dining room table. Styrofoam balls, paint, wooden dowels, a project board that I'd had to run to the craft store to purchase while the kids ate ice cream and watched cartoons. Mrs. Patterson said it has to be really good, Emma informed me, painting a styrofoam ball bright red for Mars. She's going to display the best ones in the hallway. No pressure then, I murmured, helping Lucas glue cotton balls onto a separate art project he'd pulled from his backpack at the last minute. By 10 o'clock, both children were finally asleep, the solar system was half finished, and I was exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. It was the exhaustion of feeling simultaneously needed and invisible, essential and taken for granted. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in Richard's old chair by the window, looking out at the quiet suburban street. Somewhere out there, Daniel was probably in a hotel bar with colleagues, discussing business strategies over expensive cocktails. Jennifer was likely still at her office, buried in case files and billable hours. And I was here, exactly where they expected me to be, doing exactly what they expected me to do. Saturday morning arrived too early. Lucas's soccer game was across town, which meant waking both kids at 7:30, getting them fed and dressed, and navigating weekend traffic to reach the fields by 8:45. I'd forgotten to ask Daniel which team Lucas was even on, so I spent the first 10 minutes wandering between fields trying to identify his group. You must be Lucas's grandma, said a woman in athletic wear and a baseball cap, extending her hand. I'm Stephanie, Aiden's mom. The boys are on the same team. Aiden, the birthday party kid. Right, yes, I said, shaking her hand while simultaneously preventing Emma from wandering toward the parking lot. Margaret Chun, are you coming to the party this afternoon? It's at that new trampoline place on Riverside Drive. 2 to 4. I had no idea about any of these details. Daniel's note had simply said, Aiden's party, Saturday afternoon. We'll be there, I confirmed, making a mental note to figure out what kind of gift was appropriate for a 5-year-old boy I'd never met. The soccer game was 45 minutes of standing in damp grass, while Lucas's team ran enthusiastically in all directions except toward the goal. Emma complained about being bored, asked for snacks 3 times, and used my phone to take approximately 73 selfies with various filters. After the game, we rushed home so I could throw together a lunch, help Emma finish painting planets, and then race to the toy store for a birthday present. By the time we arrived at the trampoline facility, I was already counting down the hours until Daniel would pick them up the next evening. The party was chaos. 30 children bouncing on trampolines, rushing through foam pits, screaming with a combination of joy and sugar-induced hysteria. I sat with the other parents and caregivers on uncomfortable benches, making small talk while keeping one eye on Emma and Lucas. So what do you do? Asked a mother named Beth, who'd introduced herself as a physical therapist. The question always stumped me. What did I do? I watched grandchildren. I volunteered at the literacy center. I existed in the spaces between other people's lives. I'm semi-retired, I said, which was technically true if you counted retiring from being Richard's wife as a career change. I do some volunteer work. Spend time with family. That's nice, Beth said with the polite dismissal of someone who'd already categorized me as uninteresting. I wish I had time for more volunteer work. Between my practice and the kids, I'm running in 12 directions at once. I nodded sympathetically, though part of me wanted to point out that I was currently running in 12 directions too, except none of them were actually mine. Sunday morning brought the science project deadline panic. Emma's solar system, while colorful, bore little resemblance to actual planetary proportions or orbital mechanics. We spent 3 hours rebuilding it while Lucas watched cartoons, and I tried not to think about all the things I should have been doing instead. My friend Patricia had texted earlier asking if I wanted to join her for the art museum's new exhibition on Chinese contemporary artists. They're featuring works exploring diaspora identity.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
She'd written, "Thought you might be interested." I'd had to decline. "Maybe next week?" I'd replied, knowing that next week would probably bring another request. Another weekend consumed by other people's emergencies. Daniel arrived at 6:30 Sunday evening, looking refreshed in that way people do after a weekend away from their children. Jennifer was with him, scrolling through her phone in the passenger seat. "How were they?" Daniel asked, kissing the top of Emma's head as she showed him her completed solar system project. "This is amazing, sweetie. Grandma must have helped you a lot." "She did everything," Emma said with cheerful honesty. "I mostly painted." Daniel laughed like this was charming rather than problematic. "That's what grandmas are for, right, Mom?" I forced a smile. "Happy to help." "Listen, I meant to mention," Daniel said as he loaded the kids' bags into his car. "We've got a situation at work. Might need you to watch them a few days next week. Maybe Tuesday through Thursday? I'll let you know for sure tomorrow." Something inside me shifted. A tiny crack in the foundation of my perpetual availability. "I'll have to check my schedule," I heard myself say. Daniel looked surprised, as if I'd spoken in a foreign language. "Your schedule?" "Yes. I have some commitments this week." This was technically untrue. My calendar was as empty as it always was. But the words felt like a small rebellion, a minor assertion of personhood. "Oh, well, okay. Let me know." He seemed uncertain, wrong-footed by this unexpected resistance. "Thanks again for this weekend, Mom. You're the best." They drove away, Emma waving from the back window, Lucas already absorbed in some handheld device. I stood in my driveway as the autumn evening settled around me, feeling something that might have been relief or might have been loneliness. Inside, my house felt too quiet. Evidence of the weekend was everywhere. Emma's hair ties on the bathroom counter, Lucas's drawings on the coffee table, a half-finished juice box on the kitchen counter. I cleaned it all up with mechanical efficiency, erasing the traces of their presence. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Museum was incredible. They're doing a workshop next month on traditional Chinese brush painting. Want to sign up together? I looked at the message for a long moment. Traditional brush painting. My mother had done beautiful calligraphy before arthritis had gnarled her hands. She tried to teach me when I was young, but I'd been too American, too impatient, too busy becoming the person I thought I was supposed to be. "Yes," I typed back. "Let's do it." It was a small yes, barely significant, but it felt like something. Monday morning I woke early and went for a walk, something I rarely did anymore. The neighborhood was quiet, the autumn air crisp and clean. I passed houses where I'd lived for 20 years but barely knew my neighbors. I'd been so busy being available for everyone else that I'd forgotten to build a life that was actually mine. At the literacy center that morning, I worked with my regular student, a woman named Rosa who was learning to read English after immigrating from El Salvador. She was 67, older than me, and every word she mastered lit up her face with fierce pride. "My granddaughter, she helps me practice," Rosa told me, carefully sounding out words in the children's book we were using. "She is patient like you." "Your granddaughter is lucky to have you," I said. Rosa looked up, her weathered face thoughtful. "I am lucky to have time with her. But I tell her I have my life too. I take English class. I go to church group. I learn new things. Is important, no? To be grandmother but also be Rosa. Her words settled into me like stones dropping into still water. To be grandmother but also be Margaret. When had I stopped being Margaret? That afternoon I did something I hadn't done in months. I pulled out the boxes I'd packed away after Richard died, the ones containing his things I couldn't bear to sort through. But tucked in with his old photographs and papers was a folder I'd forgotten about. Information on teaching English abroad programs for retirees. Richard and I had looked into it years ago, during one of those late-night conversations about what we'd do when he finally retired. Teaching in China or Southeast Asia, immersing ourselves in different cultures, making a difference while having an adventure. Then Richard had died, and the folder had been packed away with all the other abandoned dreams. I spread the papers across my dining room table, looking at program descriptions and testimonials from teachers in their 60s and 70s, living in places like Vietnam and Thailand and rural China. The application deadline for spring programs was in 6 weeks. My phone rang. Daniel. Hey Mom, so about this week. Definitely need you Tuesday through Thursday. Jennifer's mom can't do it, and our nanny gave notice. Can you handle all 3 days? The old Margaret would have said yes immediately. Would have already been mentally rearranging her minimal commitments to accommodate his needs. The new Margaret, the one who was barely even born yet, took a breath. No, Daniel. I can't. Silence on the other end. Then, what do you mean you can't? I mean I'm not available this week. I have other plans. What plans? Mom, this is important. I've got back-to-back meetings, and Jennifer has a deposition. And I have commitments that are also important. My heart was pounding but my voice stayed steady. I'm sorry, but you'll need to find another solution. Are you serious right now? Since when do you have commitments you can't move? Since right now, I thought. Since this moment. Since I decided to be more than just your backup childcare plan. I'm very serious, I said. I love Emma and Lucas, but I can't be your only solution every time you have a scheduling conflict. You need to make other arrangements. More silence. Then fine. We'll figure something out. He hung up without saying goodbye. I set the phone down, my hands shaking. For a moment I felt guilty, selfish, like I'd failed some fundamental test of grandmotherhood. But underneath the guilt was something else. A tiny spark of something that felt like possibility. That evening I called Patricia. That brush painting workshop. When is it exactly? November 15th. Why? Because I'm signing up. And I want to ask you about something else. I looked at the teaching abroad brochure spread across my table. Do you remember that time I mentioned wanting to teach English overseas? Vaguely. That was years ago, wasn't it? With Richard. Yes. But I'm thinking about doing it now. On my own. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Margaret Chun, are you having a midlife crisis at 62? I don't think so. I think I'm finally having a life period. She laughed. Well, it's about damn time. Tell me more. We talked for an hour, and by the end of the conversation, I'd committed to attending an information session about teaching abroad the following week. Patricia offered to come with me, moral support for what she called my late-blooming adventure phase. Over the next few days, Daniel didn't call. This was unusual. Typically, he checked in regularly, often with last-minute requests or schedule changes. His silence felt like punishment, a withdrawal of attention meant to make me reconsider my refusal. I refused to reconsider. Instead, I researched. I read blogs from older adults teaching abroad. I calculated finances and considered logistics. I attended the information session, where an energetic woman in her early 70s talked about teaching English in a small village in Thailand and described it as the most meaningful experience of her life. My grandchildren thought I was crazy, she said with a grin. But I needed to do something for myself. Something that was mine, not defined by being someone's mother or grandmother or widow. The words resonated so deeply I almost cried. On Thursday evening, Daniel finally called. His tone was different, less certain. Mom, we need to talk. All right. Jennifer and I have been discussing things. This nanny situation isn't working out. And with both our careers at critical points, we need more reliable childcare. Here it comes, I thought. The guilt trip. The explanation of how I'm failing them. We've decided to move. Jennifer got an offer from a firm in Denver. Better pay, better hours, more family-friendly environment. We're putting the house on the market next month. Denver, Colorado, 1,000 miles away. I should have felt devastated. Instead, I felt a strange lightness. That sounds like a good opportunity for you, I said carefully. Yeah, it is. He paused. I know you're probably upset. About us leaving. About not being able to see the kids as much. I'll miss them terribly, I said, and that was true. But Daniel, this is your life. You need to make decisions that work for your family. Right. Well. He sounded wrong-footed again, as if he'd expected more resistance. We'll still visit. Holidays and summer and stuff. Of course. Another pause. Mom, about the other day. When I asked you to watch the kids and you said no. That wasn't really like you. Maybe it should be more like me, I said gently. I love being a grandmother, but I can't be your only solution to every childcare challenge. It's not fair to me, and honestly, it's not healthy for Emma and Lucas either. They need to know their parents can prioritize them. I could hear him breathing, processing this. Are you mad at us? Is this about something Jennifer and I did? No, sweetheart. This is about something I didn't do. I didn't maintain boundaries. I didn't protect my own time and energy. I didn't live my own life. That's on me, not you. So what are you going to do? With your time, I mean. I looked at the teaching abroad application on my computer screen, half completed. I'm going to have an adventure. An adventure? Mom, you're 62. Exactly. Which means I probably have another 20 or 30 good years if I'm lucky. And I'd like to spend them being Margaret, not just Grandma or Daniel's mom or Richard's widow. Just Margaret, figuring out what that means. The conversation wound down with promises to see each other before the move, to have a proper goodbye with the kids. When we hung up, I felt lighter than I had in years. Over the following weeks, as Daniel and Jennifer prepared for their move to Denver, I prepared for mine. I completed the teaching abroad application. I signed up for the brush painting workshop. I joined a hiking group for older adults and discovered I actually enjoyed physical activity when it wasn't chasing after grandchildren. I also had several long, honest conversations with Daniel about boundaries and expectations. He struggled with it, clearly uncomfortable with this version of his mother, who said no and made plans that didn't revolve around his convenience. But gradually, something shifted between us. We started talking as adults rather than as parent and child, locked in old patterns of dependence and obligation. The day they left for Denver, I hosted a goodbye dinner. Emma cried, clinging to me and making me promise to visit soon. Lucas was quiet, but he pressed a drawing into my hand as they were leaving, the two of us holding hands under a rainbow. Don't forget me, Grandma, he whispered. Never, I promised, hugging him tight. And you know what? We can video chat every week. And maybe next summer, you can come visit me in Vietnam. His eyes went wide. Vietnam? Like the country? Like the country, I confirmed. Where Grandma is going to teach English and have an adventure. After they drove away, I stood in my driveway in the gathering dusk, feeling the familiar ache of missing them already mixed with something else. Excitement for what came next. The house was quiet when I went back inside, but it was a different kind of quiet than before. Not empty and waiting, but peaceful and full of possibility. I had 4 months before my teaching assignment began. 4 months to prepare, to learn, to become whoever Margaret Chun was supposed to be when she wasn't busy fulfilling everyone else's expectations. I made a cup of tea and sat down at my computer, opening the document where I'd been drafting emails to the teaching program coordinator. But first, I opened a new document and typed a title, Things Margaret Wants to Do. The list grew longer than I expected. Learn to speak Mandarin properly, not just the kitchen Chinese my parents spoke. Take that cooking class in Tuscany that Richard and I never got to. Write letters to my grandchildren about my adventures so they know their grandmother as a whole person. Make friends who know me as Margaret, not as someone's mother or wife or grandmother. Read all those books on my nightstand. Wake up some mornings with no plans at all. Figure out who I am when nobody needs me to be anything in particular. I looked at the list for a long time, feeling something warm and unfamiliar blooming in my chest. It took me a moment to recognize it, hope. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Brush painting class starts tomorrow. Ready to discover your inner artist? More than ready, I typed back. See you there. That night, I slept better than I had in years. And when I woke the next morning, it wasn't to an alarm or to someone needing something from me. I woke naturally, to sunlight streaming through my bedroom window, to the sound of birds in the tree outside, to the open possibility of a day that belonged entirely to me. 62 years old, and my life was finally beginning. The brush painting class met in a converted warehouse downtown, all exposed brick and northern light streaming through tall windows. I arrived early, clutching the supply list Patricia had forwarded, feeling absurdly nervous about something as simple as an art class. The instructor was a woman in her 50s named Lin Wei, originally from Taiwan, who moved through the space with graceful efficiency as she set up workstations. When she saw me hesitating near the door, she smiled warmly. "First time with brush painting?" she asked in lightly accented English. "First time with any kind of painting," I admitted. "Unless you count helping my granddaughter with school projects." "Good. Then you have no bad habits to unlearn." She guided me to a workstation by the window. Brush painting is not about perfection. It's about flow, about letting the brush speak through you. Patricia arrived moments later, breathless from rushing across town from her dental practice. Sorry. Root canal ran late. Did I miss anything?" "Just my confession that I have no idea what I'm doing," I said. "Perfect. Neither do I." The class was small, just 8 students ranging in age from early 30s to late 70s. Lin Wei began with a demonstration, her brush moving across rice paper with fluid confidence, creating a bamboo stalk with just a few strokes. It looked effortless, almost magical. When I tried to replicate the movement, my brush wobbled and bled, creating something that looked more like a diseased vegetable than elegant bamboo. "Don't think so much," Lin Wei said, appearing behind me. "Your grandmother was Chinese, yes? You have this knowledge in your bones. Let your hand remember what your mind has forgotten." I tried again. And again. Each attempt was slightly less terrible than the last, though none approached anything resembling competence. But something about the repetition, the focus, required to control the brush, the way everything else fell away when I concentrated on that single stroke, felt meditative in a way I hadn't experienced before. "This is harder than pulling teeth," Patricia muttered beside me, staring at her own mangled bamboo. "But weirdly addictive," I replied, reaching for a fresh sheet of paper. By the end of the 2-hour session, my shoulders ached and I had ink stains on my fingers, but I felt more present in my body than I had in months. Lin Wei moved through the room, offering gentle corrections and surprising encouragement. "You have sensitive touch," she told me, examining my least terrible attempt. "You're trying to force control, but brush painting is about partnership. The brush has its own nature. You must work with it, not against it." Her words felt applicable to more than just art. As Patricia and I gathered our supplies, Lin Wei approached with a flyer. "I'm leading a calligraphy retreat in 2 weeks. 3 days at a meditation center in the mountains. It's intensive, but if you're serious about learning, it would accelerate your progress significantly." I looked at the dates. A weekend, Friday through Sunday. The old Margaret would have automatically checked whether Daniel might need her, whether there were any family obligations that would prevent her from going. The new Margaret, still uncertain and unsteady in her newfound autonomy, simply said, "I'll take one." "Me too," Patricia added. "Though I should warn you, I'm terrible at meditation. My brain never shuts up." Lin Wei laughed. "That's why we practice. The brush teaches silence." Walking to our cars, Patricia linked her arm through mine. "You seem different lately. Lighter somehow." "Daniel's moving to Denver," I said. "Next month." "Oh, Margaret. I'm sorry. That must be difficult." "It is and it isn't." I unlocked my car, tossing my art supplies into the back seat. "I'll miss the kids terribly. But honestly, Patricia, I think I need the distance. I'd become so consumed with being available for them that I'd forgotten how to be anything else. Hence the sudden interest in brush painting and teaching abroad. Hence the sudden interest in being Margaret Chan, actual person with actual interests." Patricia studied me with the directness of someone who'd known me for 15 years. "I'm proud of you. This reinvention thing you're doing, it's brave. Or foolish. I haven't decided which yet. Maybe it's both. Maybe that's the point." Over the next 2 weeks, I fell into a new rhythm. Mornings at the Literacy Center with Rosa and my other students. Afternoons spent researching Vietnam, learning basic phrases in Vietnamese, reading blogs from teachers who'd gone before me. Evenings practicing brush strokes at my dining room table, my movements becoming incrementally less clumsy with each session. Daniel called once, a brief conversation about moving logistics and whether I wanted any of the furniture they were getting rid of. His tone was cordial but distant, as if he hadn't quite forgiven me for my unavailability yet couldn't articulate why it bothered him. "How are Emma and Lucas handling the move?" I asked. "Emma's excited. Lucas is quieter than usual, but you know him. He keeps things inside. Like his father, I thought but didn't say. Tell them I love them. And that I'll call this weekend to video chat." "Sure." "Mom, listen, Jennifer's mother has been helping with the packing and kid watching. She mentioned she might move to Denver too, once we're settled. To be closer to the grandkids." There was a question embedded in the statement, an unspoken inquiry about whether I felt competitive or left out. The old Margaret would have felt both. The new one simply felt relief. "That's wonderful," I said sincerely. "Emma and Lucas will benefit from having family nearby. You could move too, you know. Denver's nice. Good cultural scene, lots of outdoor activities." "Daniel, I'm going to Vietnam." "Right. The teaching thing. You're really doing that." "I'm really doing that." He sighed, the sound crackling through the phone connection. "I don't understand this sudden need to run off to Asia. What are you trying to prove?" "I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm trying to live." "That's cryptic." "Maybe. Or maybe it's the most honest thing I've said in years." After we hung up, I sat with my own words. Trying to live. When had mere existence become so disconnected from actual living? When had I stopped being an active participant in my own story and become just a supporting character in everyone else's? The calligraphy retreat arrived with crisp autumn weather and brilliant foliage. The meditation center was 2 hours north, nestled in mountains that were just beginning their seasonal color change. Patricia picked me up at dawn, her car loaded with overnight bags and enough snacks to sustain a small army. "I stress eat when I'm meditating," she explained cheerfully. "Something about forced silence makes me want to chew." The center was beautiful in an austere way, all clean lines and natural materials, with large windows framing views of the surrounding forest. Our rooms were simple. A narrow bed, a small desk, minimal decoration. It felt like the physical manifestation of the mental clearing I'd been trying to achieve. Lin Wei greeted the dozen retreat participants in a meditation hall that smelled of incense and old wood. "For 3 days, we will practice silence except during instruction periods. We will learn to listen to the brush, to the paper, to the space between strokes. This is not about creating beautiful art. This is about discovering what happens when we stop talking and start paying attention." The first day was harder than I'd anticipated. My mind, so long occupied with other people's needs and schedules, rebelled against the enforced quiet. I kept thinking of things I should be doing, calls I should be making, tasks that needed completing. My brushwork reflected this internal chaos, producing jagged, uncertain marks that bore no resemblance to the elegant examples Lin Wei demonstrated. "You're fighting yourself," she said during an afternoon consultation, examining my attempts with kind but unflinching assessment. "Every stroke shows the war between what you think you should do and what your hand wants to do. Why are you at war with yourself, Margaret?" The question landed with unexpected weight. Why was I at war with myself? "I'm not sure I know how to not fight anymore," I admitted. "I've spent so long trying to be what everyone needed that I don't know what I actually am underneath all that effort." Lin Wei nodded as if this made perfect sense. "Then perhaps that's what you need to learn here. Not calligraphy. How to stop fighting. How to simply be." She demonstrated a stroke, her brush moving with effortless confidence. "See? No hesitation. No second-guessing. The brush knows where it wants to go. I just allow it." I tried again. And again. Slowly, incrementally, something began to shift. My strokes became less forced, more fluid. Not good exactly, but less actively bad. Less at war with themselves. By evening meditation, I was exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. It was the exhaustion of letting go, of releasing control, of allowing space for something other than constant doing. Patricia and I broke silence briefly while preparing for bed, whispering in our shared bathroom like teenagers at a sleepover. "This is intense," she hissed, brushing her teeth. I cried during the afternoon session for no apparent reason. "Me too," I admitted. "Something about the silence just brings everything up." "Everything we've been pushing down, you mean?" "Exactly." The second day brought breakthrough. During morning practice, my brush moved across the paper and produced a stroke that actually resembled Lin Wei's example. Just one, but it was enough. I felt the difference in my arm, in my breath, in the quality of attention I was bringing to the movement. "There," Lin Wei said quietly, appearing beside me. "You found it. That moment of surrender. Can you find it again?" Couldn't, not immediately. The next dozen strokes were back to my usual struggle. But now I knew what I was reaching for. That feeling of flow where the brush moved through me rather than by me. During the afternoon session, Lin Wei introduced us to creating actual characters rather than just practice strokes. She demonstrated the character for peace, her brush dancing across the paper with practiced ease. "In Chinese, peace is not passive," she explained. "This character shows a woman under a roof. Peace is shelter, safety, home. But notice it's not the roof that creates peace. It's the woman. She is the essential element." I stared at the character, thinking about all the ways I tried to create peace for my family by making myself smaller, by always being available, by never asking for anything in return. That hadn't been peace. That had been erasure. When I attempted the character, my brush moved with unexpected confidence. The woman under the roof appeared on my paper, imperfect but recognizable. "Better," Lin Wei said. "You're beginning to trust yourself." That evening's meditation was different. Instead of fighting the silence, I sank into it. My mind still chattered, still produced its endless stream of thoughts and worries and plans, but I didn't engage with them. I let them pass like clouds, observing without attachment. In that space of non-engagement, something unexpected emerged. A memory of my mother, years ago when I was a child, practicing calligraphy at our kitchen table while dinner cooked on the stove. I'd been doing homework, bored and restless, and I'd asked her why she spent so much time making fancy writing when regular letters worked just fine. "Because," she'd said in her careful English, "when I make these characters, I remember who I was before I came to this country, before I became someone's wife, someone's mother. The brush helps me remember Margaret's grandmother, the girl who loved beauty and silence." I'd forgotten that conversation, forgotten that my mother had also struggled with the tension between duty and selfhood, between who she was and who everyone needed her to be. Had she ever resolved that tension? Or had she, like me, simply submerged it beneath decades of service and sacrifice? The final day of the retreat was bittersweet. During our closing circle, Lin Wei asked each of us to share one thing we were taking away from the experience. When my turn came, I found myself saying, "I learned that I've been trying to create peace by erasing myself. But real peace requires presence, not absence. I need to be here, fully here, even if that makes me inconvenient." Patricia squeezed my hand. Several other participants nodded in recognition. "That is the work," Lin Wei said simply. "To be fully present, even when presence is uncomfortable. Especially then." Driving home, Patricia and I broke our 3-day silence with the relief of people who'd been holding their breath underwater. "So," she said, navigating the mountain roads with careful attention. "Teaching English in Vietnam. When do you leave?" "February 15th. Assuming I complete all the paperwork and actually go through with this." "Are you having doubts?" "Constant ones." "I'm 62, Patricia. What am I thinking, moving to Asia to teach English? I don't speak Vietnamese. I've never even been to Southeast Asia. I've barely traveled at all since Richard died. Sounds like perfect timing then. Or perfect foolishness. Margaret, let me tell you something my therapist told me after my divorce. She said sometimes the scariest decisions are scary precisely because they're right. If they were wrong, they'd be comfortable. They'd feel safe. Fear isn't always a warning. Sometimes it's a compass pointing toward growth. I let those words settle as we drove through the autumn landscape, leaves blazing gold and crimson against an impossibly blue sky. Fear as a compass. Discomfort as a signal of rightness. When Daniel told me he was moving to Denver, I said slowly, my first feeling was relief. Not sadness or abandonment or fear of losing access to my grandchildren. Relief. What kind of grandmother feels relieved when her son moves away? The kind who's been drowning and finally sees the shore, Patricia said quietly. You love those kids, Margaret. But love doesn't mean you have to sacrifice yourself on the altar of their convenience. We drove in companionable silence for a while before Patricia spoke again. My daughter called last week. She's pregnant again. Third kid. Congratulations, Grandma. Thanks. And here's the thing, I'm excited. Genuinely excited. But when she started talking about how much she'll need my help, how invaluable I'll be for childcare, I felt this panic rising. And then I did something I've never done before. What? I told her I'd love to help occasionally, but I couldn't be her primary childcare solution. I told her about my travel plans, my pottery class, the book club I just joined. I told her I had a life. How did she react? Shocked. Hurt maybe. But you know what? Needed to be said. I spent 30 years putting everyone else first. I've earned the right to put myself first now. We've earned it, I corrected. We've earned it, she agreed. Back home my house felt different. Not empty exactly but spacious. Full of possibility rather than absence. I unpacked my calligraphy supplies and set up a practice space at my dining room table, hanging Lin Wei's example characters on the wall for reference. My phone showed several missed calls from Daniel. I called back, preparing myself for whatever minor emergency required my intervention. Mom, finally. I've been trying to reach you all weekend. I was at a retreat. In the mountains. No cell service. A retreat? What kind of retreat? Calligraphy. Meditation. Silence. He processed this for a moment. That sounds very unlike you. Maybe it's exactly like me, and you just haven't noticed. Another pause. Listen, I wanted to give you an update. The Denver move is happening faster than we expected. Jennifer's firm wants her to start right after Thanksgiving. We close on the house next week. Thanksgiving was 3 weeks away. They'd be gone before Christmas. That's soon, I said, keeping my voice neutral. Yeah, Emma and Lucas want to say goodbye properly. We're planning a weekend here before we leave. Would you come? Maybe Saturday through Monday? One last visit before we go. The request was reasonable, even touching. A proper goodbye, quality time with my grandchildren before distance separated us. But something made me hesitate. Let me check my schedule and get back to you, I said. Mom, it's us. Your family. What schedule could be more important? Daniel, I have commitments. I have a life that doesn't revolve around your family's needs. Jesus, when did you become so cold? The accusation stung precisely because it was so unfair. I'm not cold. I'm bounded. There's a difference. Is this about me asking you to watch the kids too much? Because I apologized for that. You didn't apologize. You explained why you needed me. That's not the same thing. I could hear him breathing, frustrated and confused. I don't understand what's happening here. You're acting like a completely different person. Good. Maybe I should have been this person all along. We ended the conversation without resolution. I promised to consider the goodbye weekend and let him know my decision. After hanging up, I felt shaky, uncertain whether I just set a healthy boundary or damaged my relationship with my son beyond repair. The next morning, I called Rosa to confirm our usual Tuesday session at the Literacy Center. Her daughter-in-law answered, explaining that Rosa was in the hospital with pneumonia. She asked for you, Maria said in halting English. She want to see you if possible. I arrived at the hospital that afternoon with a bag of books and a thermos of soup. Rosa looked small and frail in the hospital bed, oxygen cannula in her nose, but her face lit up when she saw me. Margaret, you come. Of course I came. How are you feeling? Old, she said with a weak smile. Tired. But doctors say I will be okay. Just need rest. We talked for a while, carefully avoiding anything that required too much energy. But eventually, Rosa grabbed my hand with surprising strength. I want to tell you something. You remember I say I have life, not just be grandmother. I remember. It's hard sometimes. My daughter, she get angry. She say I am selfish, that I should want to help with grandchildren. She not understand that I help more when I am happy, when I have purpose beyond their needs. I understand completely. You going on adventure, yes? The teaching? Yes. Vietnam. In February. Rosa's eyes grew bright. Good. You go. You teach. You have life. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for being whole person. Tears prickled my eyes. I'm scared, Rosa. What if I'm making a terrible mistake? What if I'm being selfish? Selfish is thinking only of yourself. Self-care is remembering you are part of everyone too. You teach me this when you teach me to read. You say, Rosa, you deserve education. You deserve knowledge. You deserve dreams. Now I teach back. Margaret, you deserve adventure. You deserve purpose. You deserve dreams. I stayed until visiting hours ended, holding Rosa's hand and feeling the weight of her wisdom settle into me. This woman who'd had to fight for every opportunity in her life, who'd crossed borders and learned new languages and rebuilt her entire existence in a foreign country, was telling me to be brave. How could I be less courageous than a 67-year-old immigrant learning to read in her third language? That evening I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Daniel. I can come for the goodbye weekend, but just Saturday and Sunday. I have commitments Monday that I can't move. Thank you, Mom. That means a lot. Emma and Lucas will be so excited. The second call was to the Teaching Abroad Program Coordinator. I want to confirm my placement in Vietnam. I'm ready to finalize all the arrangements. Wonderful, Margaret. We're excited to have you. You'll be teaching in a small town outside Hanoi. Very authentic experience, close-knit community. The teachers there before you have loved it. After the calls, I sat in my quiet house and practiced calligraphy, my brush moving across the paper with increasing confidence. I worked on the character for Journey, its elegant strokes suggesting both movement and purpose. The goodbye weekend arrived cold and gray, early winter asserting itself. Daniel and Jennifer's house was in chaos, boxes everywhere, rooms half dismantled, the strange liminal quality of a space being abandoned. Emma threw herself at me when I arrived. Grandma, we're moving to the mountains. Daddy says we'll see real snow, not just the little bit we get here. Lucas hugged me more quietly, his face serious. Will you visit us in Colorado? Of course, sweetheart. And you'll visit me too. Jennifer's mom is moving near us, Emma announced. She's going to watch us after school and teach us to bake cookies. That sounds lovely, I said, meaning it. Jennifer's mother was a kind woman who'd been sidelined by her own health issues. This would be good for everyone. The weekend was bittersweet. We went to the Children's Museum, had a final dinner at Emma's favorite restaurant, made pancakes together Sunday morning. Through it all, I found myself observing rather than just participating, noticing the ways Daniel and Jennifer actually were present with their children when work wasn't consuming them, recognizing that my absence might force them to build the systems and support they'd been avoiding by relying too heavily on me. Sunday evening, as I prepared to leave, Emma clung to me in tears. I don't want to say goodbye, Grandma. I don't want you to be so far away. Distance doesn't change love, I told her, kneeling to her level. I'll always be your grandmother. We'll video chat every week. I'll send you postcards from Vietnam. And you know what? Maybe when you're a little older you can come visit me there. Imagine that adventure. Vietnam is far, Lucas said seriously. Very far. But that's where Grandma is going to teach children English, just like I taught you to read when you were little. Why do you have to go? Emma asked, her voice small. It was a fair question, one I'd asked myself countless times. Because I have work to do in the world, sweetheart. Work that's mine, that makes me feel alive and useful. Just like your mommy and daddy have work that's important to them. Daniel walked me to my car, his hands shoved in his pockets against the cold. Thanks for coming, Mom. It meant a lot to the kids. To me too. I wouldn't have missed it. Listen, about everything that's been said lately. About boundaries and availability and all that. I've been thinking. I waited, giving him space to find his words. Jennifer and I, we did take advantage. I see that now. We treated you like a resource instead of a person. That wasn't fair. Thank you for saying that. Are we okay? You and me. I considered the question carefully. We're different than we were. But different can be better, Daniel. I love you. That hasn't changed. But I need you to see me as someone beyond your mother. Beyond someone who exists to solve your problems. I'm trying. It's just weird, this version of you that says no one has plans and goes to Asia. Get used to weird because this version is here to stay. He hugged me then, tight and genuine. I'm proud of you, Mom. I don't think I've said that enough. Maybe ever. But watching you do this, build this whole new life for yourself, it's impressive. His words settled into the hollow places in my heart. That means more than you know. Driving home through the early darkness, I felt the weight of goodbye settling over me. But underneath the sadness was something else. Freedom. Space. The vast open territory of a life that was finally fully mine to shape. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Patricia. How was the goodbye weekend? Emotional. Good. Hard. All of it. Want to get dinner? I have news. We met at our favorite Vietnamese restaurant. A small family-run place where Patricia and I had been eating for years. It felt prophetic, eating Vietnamese food as I prepared to move to Vietnam. So, Patricia said once we'd ordered, I did something impulsive. Tell me. I quit my job. Or rather, I'm transitioning to part-time. 3 days a week instead of 5. I'm 61 years old, and I'm tired of spending every waking hour looking at other people's teeth. Patricia, that's wonderful. Is it? Or is it crazy? I'll have less money, less security, but more time, more life. You inspired me, Margaret. All this talk about living instead of just existing, it got me thinking. What am I waiting for? We raised our glasses of Vietnamese iced coffee. To late blooming, I said. To better late than never, Patricia countered. We clinked glasses and drank, 2 women in their 60s finally claiming the lives they deferred for so long. The weeks between Daniel's move and my departure for Vietnam passed in a blur of preparation. Visa applications and medical clearances. Selling furniture I wouldn't need. Boxing up Richard's remaining things, finally ready to let them go. Intensive Vietnamese language tutorials that left my brain exhausted and my confidence shaken. Rosa recovered from her pneumonia and returned to the literacy center. Thinner but determined. You leaving soon, she observed during our first session back. 6 weeks. You are ready? Not even slightly. She laughed, the sound still weak but genuine. Good. Being ready is overrated. Being willing is what matters. Being willing. I turned the phrase over in my mind, finding truth in it. I wasn't ready to move across the world at 62. But I was willing. Willing to be uncomfortable, to be uncertain, to step into a future I couldn't predict or control. Christmas approached, the first I'd spend alone in decades. Daniel invited me to Denver, but I declined. You need this first holiday to be just your family, to establish your new traditions. I'll come in the spring. Instead, I spent Christmas Day with Patricia and her family, feeling welcomed but slightly untethered, existing in the strange liminal space between old life and new. On New Year's Eve, I stayed home practicing calligraphy and packing the last of my belongings. At midnight, I stood at my window watching fireworks bloom over the city, thinking about all the years I'd welcomed while standing beside Richard, and later beside Daniel's family, always positioned in relation to someone else. This year, I welcomed the future alone. And for the first time in my life, alone didn't feel lonely. Felt like possibility. The airport departure lounge hummed with the energy of people going somewhere, all of us suspended between departure and arrival. I sat near the gate for my flight to Hanoi, my carry-on containing everything I'd decided was essential. Clothing, teaching materials, a journal Lin Wei had given me as a parting gift, and the drawing Lucas had made of us under a rainbow. Patricia had driven me to the airport at dawn, both of us unusually quiet during the drive. At the security checkpoint, she'd hugged me fiercely. You're doing it. You're actually doing it. Last chance to tell me I'm insane, I'd said. Oh, you're definitely insane. But the best kind of insane. The kind that chooses living over existing. Now waiting to board, I pulled out my phone for one last check of messages. Emma had sent a video the night before, her and Lucas waving at the camera from their new bedroom in Denver. We love you, Grandma. Have fun teaching. Bring us back something cool. Daniel's text had arrived that morning, brief but meaningful. Safe travels, Mom. Proud of you. Call when you land. Even Jennifer had messaged, something she rarely did. Thank you for everything you've done for our family. Enjoy your adventure. You've earned it. Rosa had come to say goodbye at the literacy center. presenting me with a handmade card covered in careful English words. Dear Margaret, you teach me read. Now I read world. You go read new world. Come back and tell story. Love, Rosa. The boarding announcement crackled overhead. I stood, slinging my bag over my shoulder, and joined the line of passengers shuffling toward the gate. No turning back now. Not that I wanted to. The flight was long, crossing the Pacific in stages, each layover a reminder of how far I was traveling from everything familiar. During the final leg to Hanoi, I sat next to a young woman reading a guidebook about Vietnam. First time? She asked, noticing my nervous energy. First time traveling this far alone, I admitted. I'm going to teach English. That's amazing. I'm backpacking for 3 months before starting graduate school. My parents think I'm crazy. My son thinks the same about me. She grinned. Then we're in good company. Hanoi greeted me with overwhelming heat and noise and color. The program coordinator, a Vietnamese-American woman named Lynn, met me at the airport with the driver. During the 2-hour journey to the small town where I'd be teaching, she briefed me on practical matters. Housing, school schedule, cultural expectations. You'll be staying with a host family for the first month, Lynn explained. The Nguyen family. They're wonderful, very patient. Mrs. Nguyen speaks some English. It helps with adjustment. The town was smaller than I'd imagined. Dusty streets lined with modest houses, motorbikes weaving through traffic with chaotic grace. The Nguyen home was painted pale yellow, with a small garden in front and a dog that barked enthusiastically at our arrival. Mrs. Nguyen emerged, a woman perhaps my age, her face creasing into a warm smile. Welcome, welcome. You are teacher Margaret, yes? Very happy you are here. My room was simple but clean, with a narrow bed, a desk, and a window overlooking the garden. After Lynn departed, Mrs. Nguyen brought tea and sweet rice cakes, sitting with me while I caught my breath. You are tired from travel. Rest today. Tomorrow school introduce you. My daughter, she practice English with you, okay? She is very excited for American teacher. That night, lying in my unfamiliar bed listening to unfamiliar sounds, street vendors calling out in Vietnamese, dogs barking, the hum of motorbikes, I felt a wave of doubt crash over me. What had I done? I was 62 years old, alone in a foreign country where I barely spoke the language, about to teach in a system I didn't understand. But underneath the doubt was something else. A fierce pride in my own courage. I'd done this. Against all reasonable objections and comfortable alternatives, I'd chosen the harder, braver path. The school was a concrete building with open-air classrooms and curious children who stared at me with undisguised fascination. My first class was 15 students, ages ranging from 8 to 12, all studying English with varying degrees of proficiency. Good morning, students, I said, following the script the previous teacher had left behind. Good morning, teacher Margaret. They chorused, their accents thick but their enthusiasm genuine. Teaching was harder than I'd anticipated. The language barrier created constant challenges. Cultural differences meant classroom management techniques I'd assumed were universal often fell flat. But slowly, week by week, I found my rhythm. I discovered that food was a universal language. When words failed, I taught through cooking demonstrations, making simple dishes and teaching vocabulary through tactile sensory experience. The children loved it, gathering around as I showed them how to fold dumplings, the same way I'd taught Emma years ago. Mrs. Nguyen's daughter Hung became my guide and translator. At 19, she was home from university for the semester, eager to practice English and show me her world. She took me to local markets, taught me to navigate motorbike taxis, explained cultural nuances I would have missed. Why you come here? She asked one evening as we walked through the night market. You have family in America. Grandchildren. Why leave? Because I needed to remember I'm more than just a grandmother, I said. I needed to prove to myself I could still do difficult things, brave things. Hung considered this seriously. My grandmother, she never go anywhere. She live same village her whole life. She say women must stay, must serve family. But I think maybe she have dreams too. Secret dreams she never tell. I think probably she did. You are brave, Hung said firmly. I want to be brave like you. The months unfolded with surprising rhythm. I video chatted with Emma and Lucas weekly, showing them my classroom, introducing them to my students, letting them see their grandmother as someone beyond their immediate world. They seemed proud if confused by my adventure. Daniel called monthly, our conversations gradually shifting from his initial worry to genuine curiosity about my experience. He told me about their life in Denver, Jennifer's demanding job, the kids' adjustment to new schools. But he also asked about my life, my students, my growth. You sound different, Mom. Happier. I feel different. Like I finally understand what it means to be fully present in my own life. Patricia visited in April, taking a week of her newly acquired free time to explore Vietnam with me. We ate street food and visited temples, got lost in Hanoi's old quarter, laughed until we cried over our clumsy attempts to order coffee in Vietnamese. You were right, I told her one evening as we watched sunset over the rice paddies near my town. Fear was a compass. It led me exactly where I needed to go. Look at us, Patricia said, linking her arm through mine. Two women in our 60s finally figuring out how to live. Better late than never. Better late than never, I agreed. The school year ended with a celebration. My students performed skits in English, proudly demonstrating their progress. Parents thanked me with small gifts and genuine warmth. The principal asked if I'd consider returning for another year. I promised to think about it. On my last evening with the Nguyen family, Mrs. Nguyen presented me with a silk scarf she'd embroidered herself. You teach my daughter English. But more, you teach her brave. You show her woman can have adventure, even grandmother woman. This gift is important. Flying home, I felt different from the woman who'd left 6 months earlier. Not transformed exactly, but more fully myself. I'd proven something essential. That life didn't end at 60 or at widowhood or at becoming a grandmother. That courage wasn't the absence of fear but the choice to move forward despite it. Daniel picked me up at the airport, Emma and Lucas bouncing with excitement in the back seat. They'd made a welcome home banner covered in drawings of Vietnamese flags and smiling stick figures. Grandma, tell us everything. Was it scary? Did you eat weird food? Did you miss us? It was scary and wonderful, and yes, I missed you terribly. But I also discovered something important. What? Lucas asked seriously. That missing someone and needing your own life aren't opposites. You can love people completely while still being your own person. That's the balance I had to learn. That evening, unpacking in my house that felt both familiar and strange after months away, I found the journal Lin Wei had given me. I'd filled it during my time in Vietnam with observations, reflections, small moments of grace. The last entry written on the plane read, At 62, I finally understand that being a good grandmother doesn't require erasing myself. Emma and Lucas don't need a martyr. They need an example of someone who lives fully, loves deeply, and knows that service and selfhood can coexist. I can be available without being consumed, present without being lost. This is the inheritance I want to leave them. Permission to live their own lives, even as they love others. My phone buzzed with a text from the teaching program coordinator. We have a placement in Thailand for next year if you're interested. Similar program, different culture. Let me know. I looked at the message for a long moment, then at the photos covering my wall. Emma and Lucas in Denver. My students in Vietnam. Rosa at the Literacy Center. Patricia at the calligraphy retreat. Lin Wei demonstrating brushstrokes. All the people who'd shaped this chapter of becoming. Thailand. Another adventure. Another opportunity to be fully, courageously myself. I typed my response. Tell me more. Then I made myself a cup of tea, settled into Richard's old chair by the window, and opened my calligraphy supplies. My brush moved across the paper with confidence now, creating the character for beginning. Because that's what this was. Not an ending, not a return to what had been, but a beginning. The start of understanding that life could be full and rich and surprising at any age, if you were brave enough to claim it. The doorbell rang. Patricia, arriving for our standing dinner date, the tradition we'd established before I left. Welcome home, world traveler, she said, hugging me tight. Ready to tell me everything? Ready to tell you everything, I confirmed. And as we settled in with takeout and stories, I felt the satisfying weight of a life fully inhabited. Not perfect, not without complexity or challenge, but mine. Gloriously, completely mine. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.